Hi, all. I'm very excited to invite you back to the Glasshouse podcast. I haven't been on in a little while. It's been super busy, but my first guest is phenomenal. Her name is Stephanie Brady, and she is the head of HR with Retail inMotion. So, welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. And thanks for asking me.
Oh, no, I'm so excited to have you on. I remember I was looking to approach you for something else. And then when I saw your profile and StephBe and all the interesting things that everybody's going to find out about, I was like, oh my Lord, like I want to be this woman when I grow up. So that was the reason that I reached out. So look, enough of me talking. Introduce people to you and what you do.
Sure. Okay, so I work in HR, like you said, and I actually joined HR late in life. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up until I was in my late 20s. So I didn't start in HR until I was in my early 30s. And I joined Retail inMotion when it was about 30 people. And we were an Irish entrepreneurial business. And I'd just been made redundant. So I said, I'll take a chance. Like, no big risk. If it doesn't work out, no problem. Disappear from my CV and we'll just move on. But it did work out. And I'm 8 years there. And it's been the ride of a lifetime. But also, I've learned so much about myself personally and professionally. So now the company has approximately 250 people. I say approximately because it changes like every day. We've about 55 roles we've opened and we're filling at the moment. Every time we get a big new client somewhere in the world, more roles go along with that. But also one of the reasons I love RIM and that I'm still there 8 years later is like I get growth every day. I get growth and I get fun every day. Something new, something hard, but also somewhere where I can apply mastery. So it's like a perfect combination for somebody like me who is curious minded and likes to have a lot of fun. I can do that in my current role. So why would I leave?
Why would you leave? And it's so interesting though, because and this is no offense to any heads of HR out there, but when you hear head of HR, it does sound quite and it is a serious job and it's a big job and it's all of those things. But when we spoke the last time, we spoke about job crafting, which is something that I'm a big believer in. And as a recruiter, it might sound strange because people say, well, I love the company, but there's no growth. And I'm like, speak to them. It's a big thing to leave your job. So tell people a little bit about how you crafted the job that you wanted to.
I've actually done it a few times. The first once or twice I didn't really realize I was doing it. And then I've obviously studied since then. And I'm a professional coach now. And I'm all into, emotional intelligence and emotional agility and all that kind of stuff. So now I can see how I can help people do it because I know how to do it intentionally now. But really what I did when I was younger was I realized I was good at certain things. I made sure people saw that I was good at those things. And then human nature is that they ask you to do more of that. So I ended up doing in my old jobs. So for example, when I was in retail, before I went back to college, study at nighttime in HR, I realized that HR was my field, but I realized I had to do 5 years of study to get there. But because I was really good at the really tough human stuff, people gave me it because they didn't want to do it, right? So I ended up doing a lot of HR work before I got into HR, which helped me get my first HR role, which, led to everything.
That's
I figure what my strengths are. I try to spend as much of my day living in those strengths because I know I'm not very much use. Like comp and ben, anybody who knows me will be laughing at this section because they know how much I don't like comp and ben.
For those listening, just explain to them what that is.
Compensation and benefits. So benchmarking, pensions, health insurance.
A lot of research in that, isn't there?
And a lot of numbers and a lot of comparisons and forecasting and data. It's really not my happy place.
No. And so I think if people are watching this on YouTube as opposed to listening to it on Spotify, they're going to know by your facial expression.
Yeah. I don't love it. And it took me a long time to admit that because I thought I had to be good at everything. And so I would kill myself. I remember sitting here, my husband's a maths teacher, and getting him to help me figure out why bonus calculations, because they wanted this really interesting bonus structure and I couldn't get my head around it. And he as a maths teacher went, well, of course, because those calculations, what they want, it actually isn't mathematically possible. And I remember sitting there going, why am I the one figuring this out? And why am I using my husband to help me with comp and ben? That's not right, is it? No. So anyway, I figured that I've got to find those experts in the business and learn how to collaborate with them. And that's what I'm good at, figuring out how to collaborate, how to get the best out of people, how to set a collaboration up for success, who does what and how to get that out. And that's my happy place.
So it's like creating that team and like letting them play to their strengths. Like it's interesting for me. So the reason I do this podcast is because not everybody gets to speak to the people that I get to speak to. So it's like, so we all benefit from like speaking to a head of HR. So you create these teams and you went into retail inMotion, and like, I know culture is very important to you and we'll definitely come back to that. But you crafted your job. The culture of the company grew, like it's so successful, like retail inMotion. And I know that the people, I know even previously a few people in there and they're still there, still happy out. But how do you get buy-in then? Because like employees often think that, they can go in, and I've made this mistake in toxic work cultures, that they can change the culture. Are you a firm believer that it has to come from the top down, or like, where do you sit with that?
No, I suppose the way I think about everything is, firstly, it's not black and white. I don't think anything's black and white. I think we live in grey. And I think the more comfortable we get with grey, the easier it is. If we need it to be black and white, and if we need it to be very straightforward, then I think we're always going to be fighting with those concepts. So I think culture comes from everywhere. I think culture is actually who we are and how we behave. And it's a tough one, because I do a lot of work on values. The next thing I'm doing straight after this is teaching a session on values. And I've actually started doing our value sessions very differently. It used to be about educating people about what they are, why we have them, how we created them. But now actually what I'm doing is I'm teaching people what are their values, why are values important, how do you make living of values in your values, and then how do we connect your values to the RIM values? Because then that's where that, but if I'm just teaching values, and if people don't understand what values are, well then it's just a waste of everybody's time really. And then they're sitting there going, well, I don't really see these values everywhere. Of course you don't. Values are not black and white. They're really hard. And when a company says it lives by its values, well, actually, I want to hear the stories where it didn't, because that's where you really see where we need growth, where we need better communication, where we need better processes. Is actually where we're not living our values, is the interesting stuff. So, I think values is hard. It's hard. It's hard. If you have, I know what my values are. Do I live in them all the time? God, no, because that's exhausting. But it's having those hard conversations. That's what I'm really interested in, is enabling and empowering people with the vocabulary and the freedom. And then me working with the executive lead, the top leaders, to be open to these conversations, to be open to the challenges, because values, they're not easy. And I think we really make them sound too easy.
Well, what I will say is, though, obviously I work with a lot of different companies, a lot of different sizes and things like that. Some companies live by their values, and other companies use their values as a page on their website. So I think if you're doing it right, it's going to be a challenge, and it's like something that you strive towards. It's not like a place that you live, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
So it's like, okay, every day we're going to keep working towards it, and if we do hit it, we're going to have to try and do better. So that's what I would think. But for people listening, so you are head of HR, and you're doing all these different things, and it's so interesting for me, like, to see that you came from retail. And I'm going to like share your LinkedIn and let people see who you are and what you've done. But I think it was in 2019, was it, you set up your own business? She laughs. And I'm so interested in this because obviously people listening know I've set my own up, and it's like it's a lot. Tell the listeners, I suppose, what it is that you set up and how it's going.
So I set up, I guess it's a coaching company, but I don't like putting myself into like a box at any time. So anybody knows me knows that as well. I struggle with like labels. So it's coaching. I suppose where I make my money in my business is coaching, but it's more about, it's about advocating. It's about helping people find where their power's gone and take that back in whatever way we can. So I set up in 2019. I had no intention of doing anything to make money in the first year. I just wanted to set up a space and get comfortable with an online presence and get comfortable with talking about myself and figuring out what it is I wanted to say. And then in 2020, what are we now? Are we 2021? No, we're 2021 now. Yeah, 2021. I launched in January to say, okay, really busy with my clients, which has been cool. What I love about what I do is, and again, this is why I'm still with Retail inMotion, I was really open with my boss when I wanted to do it. I said to him, I need something for me. And one of the reasons, again, I haven't moved on from RIM. So like, I mean, I could apply for companies where there's many more employees, where there's thousands. I like doing micro and macro HR, and I never want to not do micro. And I know it's not for me. I'm very, very happy. I love doing strategy. I love doing high level stuff. I like doing very philosophical stuff, you know, but at the same time, if somebody is in need in my company, I want to be able to set up a session with them and properly coach them to help them get where they want to be and fulfill their needs. And I'd never be able to do that in a huge company. And I'd never be let in a huge company, you know, I'd never be let.
No, it would be so segmented.
Yeah. And I don't want to do that. I suppose I learned a couple of years ago what I really want, and I wrote it in a letter to myself. And what I wrote has come true. The way that my StephBe works with my RIM work, it's like both elevates each other. So everything I learned for StephBe, I apply in RIM, and vice versa with my clients and with how I'm doing my business. They really do. They really do. And because I'm so fulfilled and so happy, that's very helpful in the workplace to have a fulfilled, happy head of HR.
Yeah. So my question then is, do you think, excuse me, do you think, I don't know if this is a difficult question, but you know, when we talk about privilege and things, and I always feel privileged now, obviously like the last 2 years were atrocious, but I feel privileged now to be able to, like, you know, work and do these kind of things and speak to people like you. But do you think that people should be able to expect that, not expect it with companies, but look for more companies that, you know, you can bring your whole self to work and or do you think that like that's more the exception rather than the rule? Because I'm conscious that maybe like if we're talking from a place of privilege that, you know, you're in a company and you get to do that, or should everyone be able to ask for something similar?
That's a good question. So I suppose, first of all, I was very quick to show my boss at the time how he would still get 100% of me in my hours and more. I mean, obviously, as the head of HR, we don't work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, right? COVID really helped me, which I'm sorry if anybody struggled and suffered in COVID, but COVID meant I got 3 hours back every day. And that means a lot when you're doing what I'm doing for my day job and running my side business. And I'm also really good at compartmentalizing. So what I would say is if somebody wants to bring themselves to work, I love that. I mean, belonging is in our DNA in RIM. However, I want you to be full on when you're working. And some people struggle with that. I'm particularly good at compartmentalizing. So, you know, the weekends I do StephBe. In the evenings I do a bit of Instagram, just to, you know, keep talking, keep doing my stuff. You know, it's my space to put things out. But during the day, I'm full on. So I'd say if you are disciplined and if you can, without being defensive, because I think as well, people get very defensive at times. And that's not helpful when you're trying to express yourself and show genuinely how things are going to work. Then I think it's very possible. When I have 2 new bosses now, so my old boss went and 2 new bosses came. And when I had my first meeting with them, I showed them all my HR strategic plans and what we do and how we add value in the business. And I said, also, by the way, you may know, because I'm very open about it, I have this side business and this is how I manage it. If you've ever got any concerns, please talk to me, because I will sort them out with you straight away. So never like, let a worry build up about what I'm doing or what I'm up to,
address it straight away.
Yeah, let's address it, because I can guarantee you I'll be able to fix that problem. And I'll be able to help you feel better. If there's anything you're worried about, I can sort that out with you. Being defensive is not helpful in a situation where you're trying to balance, 2 careers.
So what advice would you give? I suppose this is, I mean, it can come under your head of HR or your coaching hat for anyone who's listening who wants to maybe ask for, it doesn't have to necessarily be a side business, but, you know, express they want to be promoted. They want a pay rise. Like I advise people on this the whole time, but like, how would you get them to approach it?
Yeah. So I would say what I've learned the last couple of years with doing all my coaching training and applying it to myself as well is I think years ago, I didn't have the vocabulary. Vocabulary is something I work on a lot with my clients. And it's really interesting what they tell me, after they've had, I've one lady who's finished up with me after about 6 months with me. And she's like, the vocabulary I have now, the way I have now of expressing myself is at a different level. I can say the things I want to say now in a way that's not defensive, not arrogant, not aggressive, because I have the words now. So I would say it's about finding the right words and the right way to express yourself, and you can do anything and you can ask for anything. It's having that emotional intelligence, emotional agility to understand your words and your tone, the impact they're having on the other person. It's like a chain reaction, you know?
True.
So what am I doing and what's the chain reaction? And then what's their reaction going to do to me? And then what's my reaction going to do to them? And I see so many conversations around like pay rise and promotions that just go down a drain because everybody's just reacting to each other in the room.
Okay, that's
So
interesting. That, and so for somebody who's going to go and do that and say they check their tone, their vocabulary, they're going in there and they don't get the outcome they want. I was actually speaking to somebody the other day who didn't get the pay rise, and she was like incandescent, because she took it personally in relation to her own worth. And my point to her was that she'd been thinking about this pay rise for about a year and a half, and when she said it to her employer, the employer was like, oh, it's not a good time, blah blah blah. And I was like, you haven't let the employer sit with it for a minute. You know, it's been like now or never. And I was trying to say to her, be very careful about drawing your line in the sand too quickly, because then if you have to say, I'm leaving, and then you don't leave, you know, you feel let down. And then also your word doesn't mean that much to the employer. Would you agree with that? Or what advice?
Absolutely. You've done surprise, give me a pay rise. And you're right. I've been sitting there fuming over it for a year and a half now. I like as well talking about dynamics. So even if you've gotten yourself ready to go into that meeting, you're carrying a year and a half worth of
energy,
rage, energy. I don't know what we call it. It's going to come out of you. It's going to come out because there's nothing you can do about that because it's going to come out. So it's really interesting as well, the dynamic and how you approach it. Sowing seeds is a really good way to approach a problem as well. You know, sow a seed, and then go and ask if that's the way your boss responds well. Also, how well do you know your boss? How do you know what triggers them, what their needs are? Because I think as well, the way I build business cases has changed a lot as well. My business cases are probably a lot shorter now, but I can show, again, my vocabulary has changed with where does this bring value? So why would I give you a pay rise? You know, if it's not a good time for the business, then why? Help me figure out how I'm going to do this. Where am I going to get the money from? Why would I do it? How can I do it? So come in as a partner to the meeting. Yeah. So change your mindset to partner rather than adversaries. There's some actually really good books around difficult conversations, and the mindset you use to have the conversation again will change that dynamic in the room, which will change the reactions. So if you go in as a partner rather than like begging and pleading and then being cross, it's totally going to change the dynamic.
And it's so interesting because it's actually the same, similar advice that I would give people going into an interview. If they haven't gotten jobs, and I'm like, this has happened to me, you know, when you send your CV and you get like nothing back, it's like into the black hole of where resumes would go. And then you're so desperate to get a job that you carry that, again, energy or whatever it is into it. And you don't give a good account of yourself because you just look, I need this job. So you're not relaxed. And also I find that people who interview, sometimes they put the interviewers on a pedestal as opposed to looking at them as potential, like, will I have a biscuit with this person at 11? You know, and obviously be respectful and professional and all of these things, but let a little bit of yourself, you know, shine through. And once they learn that and they realize that they are equal, they are worthy, they are enough, even if they don't get the job, that they start to see different outcomes. Did you know that the whole way through your career? Was that something when you started to do coaching that you realized that I'm enough?
I had massive imposter syndrome before I went on a number of courses. I went on a leadership course, which was amazing.
Was that while you were in this company?
While I was in this company, yeah. Lufthansa is our owner, and Lufthansa put me on the most amazing leadership course, changed my life. And at the same time, I was very lucky to be receiving executive coaching from RIM, and the two combined really helped me get over some massive blockers I had for myself. It was only me putting them in my way, nobody else. Now, I'm still in the same job I was in because I didn't want to change jobs. I didn't go to it for a change in job. I wanted it to feel differently about myself and about my job because I
That's
have
so
to find,
interesting. So you wanted to
yeah,
sit in the same role, but because everybody thinks that if I do training, it's like because it's progression, but it can be just to be more comfortable in the same
mhm, absolutely.
space.
Yeah, for me, I made a list a couple of years ago of what does success mean to me. Actually, I think I've got it as a blog on LinkedIn on my website because I put a lot of thought into it. For me, it's not about empire building. It's not about having tons of employees. It's about really enjoying what I do and creating value, like I say, in a micro and a macro level. So I was really clear with Lufthansa before I went on this lovely leadership development course. I'd probably be staying here after it. I probably won't want another job because I really like what I do and I like how I do it. And I just want to do more of it. I want to add more value, but I'd like to maybe stay where I am while I do that,
Yeah.
So yeah, they really helped me unblock my unblock my blockers. And I realized that I was carrying around this feeling of failure with me that was getting in my own way. And we were able to identify the points in my career where I felt like a massive failure and just get rid of it so that it wasn't in my way anymore. I was the only one carrying it. Nobody else saw it.
Yeah, but you know what though, and I will say this to you, it's the way that you can be vulnerable, and I think that people in leadership need to learn this more. I mean, I'm not saying I'm in leadership whatsoever, but I had like huge failures or huge like professional challenges over the last couple of years, as a lot of people did with COVID and things like that. And my biggest fear was not reaching perfection. It was like I didn't want to make a mistake. And that may have been like, from certain bosses or, you have to keep the bar so high. And over the past few years, COVID was good for me in the way of it was like, you're not perfect. It's good to just be on the journey to strive for it. And also then I had a people pleasing thing, and maybe less people pleasing, but I wanted them to be happy and comfortable. And I don't know if it was because I had this huge extended family and it was like, right with your nana or your mom or whoever it was and always minding other people. And the therapist that I had gone to see, he was like, do you ever just ask yourself, how are you? And I'm like, no. And he asked me that when I was 41. And I was like, I don't think I've ever asked myself, to check in with yourself. It was just like, just keep going to the next, to the next, to the next. So I think for you to share that, like that you had blockers, you had like imposter syndrome. She's like, yes, that
Big
will
time,
help so
like
many
big
people.
time.
Yeah, and that it can be addressed. Like I think the first thing with a problem like that, or an issue, not necessarily a problem, is to recognize it.
And that's what the scientists say. Once we acknowledge it and name it, that is a huge part of fixing it. Just the sense of relief you get when you have a name for something. You go, oh my God, yeah, that's what I feel. Okay.
Okay, so now I can do something.
Yeah.
And then the more you share, which I find is really interesting, and I know people will reach out to you after they hear this podcast, is that you will get more people, men and women, talking about what they went through. And that's what I found. It was like I actually ended up building a community of people who are like, and it's give and take, and I get as much from them as they get from me. In relation to the culture that you're trying to build, and this does lean into it, there are a lot of toxic companies, or toxic cultures within companies. And I had done a post on LinkedIn. It was actually about my goddaughter who was being bullied in school, and she had to be removed from the school. So I just put a post up. If anybody had been in that situation, either comment or send me a message, and I'm going to share it with her, because she was like she was in Jigsaw and everything, so she's having a really tough time. And I'd say I got about 137 private messages, and these are from people who are like VPs, CEOs, to entry level, to talking about school, to like really accomplished people who carried all of this stuff through. How do you stop the school ground or schoolyard mentality coming into, because I know it's a lot to do with hiring, and I try and weed it out.
There's a lot to do with hiring.
It is a lot to do with recruitment.
Yeah, I was going to say we hire sound people, like sound people. And I mean that, and like I will always, you said it earlier, I will pick the person I would go to dinner with over the overly experienced person every time. Have you heard am I allowed to do a little swear word?
Yeah.
Okay. The asshole matrix. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I've never heard.
Oh my God. I'm going to write a blog on it because it's like, so I have a very chaotic mind. So I love matrices and diagrams because they help me take my chaos and I go, oh my God, yeah, that's what you do with it. So the asshole matrix is great because you plot your person in the matrix and then it tells you whether you should fire them or if they're like an expert asshole, how do you just like, put them on their own as an expert somewhere over there that doesn't have to like maybe interact with people. Because firing isn't always the answer either.
No.
Also, I do find that I believe that feedback should be like breathing because, not everybody believes that. And we don't tell people how they make us feel. And we don't tell people when their behavior is out of order. So I kind of see myself as the super nanny. Remember super nanny?
I do remember super nanny.
Like I will actually love people to death in my company, but I'll also slap them across the ear when they're being, pains. And like, I will tell people like that is out of order, or why haven't you spoken to that person? If they were on my team, that would not be tolerated. Why are you tolerating it? So I'm quite, I suppose, gobby that way.
Well, no, I wouldn't even say that it's gobby. I think it's more just like, let's call a spade a spade,
yep.
And I mean, never in the history of the world has, well, two things. When, abject panic has never solved anything, and neither has sweeping stuff under the rug, because eventually, they are not like the processes that you want to follow. No, that's good, because I find though that more people now, and you even see it in the news, certain companies were thinking that if somebody worked from home, that we'd cut their salary. And I was just thinking, well, you didn't pay them more because they had to commute for an hour and a half. So like, how can you, like, what do you think when people hear that? Because like, that's coming from CEOs or, sometimes head of HR. Yeah. These are people in your industry. Like,
yeah, I actually can't stand sweeping statements. So again, for me, it's a box that you're trying to put everybody and everything into. I can't stand it. Yeah. So for example, everybody should do a 4-day week. I'm sorry, but I know people who would panic, like employees who would go, how will I get my work done in a 4-day week? I'll just end up working 5 days over 4 days. Like, it's not possible. It doesn't make sense.
Or working the 5th day, but not getting paid.
Yeah. So like, I mean, we need to think a lot harder before we make these sweeping statements about 4-day weeks. It's something that needs to evolve. It's something that you need to test and try. But I know my company would actually panic if I said, because we are too busy. We can't,
for me personally, it wouldn't work. For me, it wouldn't work. Yeah. It's like, it would be a disaster.
Yeah. So, I mean, these sweeping statements of, Sweden, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, but again, you don't know how long it's taken for them to get there. We're not hearing about the companies it doesn't work for. We're only hearing about the companies it does work for.
And it would have to be industry dependent as well,
I would imagine. I mean, there's so many, again, this is what, and I don't listen to much of it, if I'm honest, because it does enrage me. These sweeping statements, it makes no sense to me when somebody says, nobody works properly from home. How do you know? Like, how do you know that for a fact? That people aren't setting themselves up for success. And actually, I work better at home because I'm not distracted, because my day is compartmentalized. I structure everything. We're in the office, everybody popping into me every 2 minutes. I got nothing done, I spend the day.
Also, though, I think people project. So, you judge other people by your own standards. Yeah. So if you're sitting there saying nobody's going to work well from home, well, maybe the problem is a little bit, maybe it's in your sitting room.
Yeah. And I also think the problem's trust. So why don't we work on trust instead of working on, this big sweeping statement? Why don't we figure out why you don't trust people? Are you hiring people you can trust? Have you set expectations properly for success? Like, what are their derailers when they're working at home? Well, okay, how do we figure out those derailers and, put a strategy into place?
Well, that's the whole thing. Just what you said there is like setting people up for success and trusting them. And that if you have that, really like unfortunately, you're miles ahead of the competition, because sometimes that's not the case. I remember, especially in recruitment, and like recruitment agencies, like for years, like across the board, recruitment agencies were going, no, you need to be in the office. We need to hear you on the phones. We need to do this. And then obviously COVID happened and business slowed. Well, I mean, it stopped really for COVID, but people were still on the phones. They were still working. They were still, they were managing. They were less stressed. They weren't being micromanaged. And, I think it changed people's expectations of what work looked like. And I know that I speak to a lot of recruiters because I do a lot in the TA space. And the idea of going back in and be told you need to do 50 business development calls per day, and you need to talk to a decision manager. And it's like, a recruiter is well, if you're doing it properly, you're supposed to be there to support the company.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be like, tormenting them,
Yeah.
and any jobs.
Yeah.
Or
The
give
cold calling that used to kill me.
Well, it's I mean,
bring 10 companies today, just 10 random companies. Okay.
I know. And what I found really weird actually as well was when they were saying like cold call, and it's like companies are shutting down. Like they're trying to really keep their own staff. So for me, when I was cold calling at that time, it wasn't really cold calling. They were like, clients, but I was like, do you need me to like offer any training to your current staff, as opposed to gives a fee, because it's like they're trying to pay their salaries. Is there anything that you want people to upskill on, or maybe whatever it would be, if it was like a sales company or a motor company? And I would get more people coming back to me because of that, as opposed to oh no, I need to hit my KPIs, or I need to do this. Like, it's just I think it's just such an outdated way of...
You're thinking of the long game, you know what I mean? By doing that, you're doing the long game, and you're also providing value to your clients rather than a sale to your clients.
Well, that's it. And I don't want to be like, I don't want to be like Del Boy, where it's things like,
here's a watch.
And especially after setting up my own business, it's like I want someone who, again, partner with, and it's like, look, do you need help? If you do, like, shout. If you don't, when you do, I'm here, and that's like the different way of recruiting. But then in some agencies, that's not smiled upon. Like, I I want to kind of give them more of a holistic approach to it. And how long were you in recruitment for? How long were you in agency?
Only for 6 months. I thought it would be a great way into HR, and it was actually. And I learned about mass recruitment, which I hadn't. And actually, at the moment, if anybody's interested, we've just released a new video today in RIM about our candidate experience, because it did really help me. I guess the thing that I brought to RIM that I was most experienced at was the recruitment, the employer branding, candidate experience, onboarding, because I did that as a recruiter, then I did that in retail for years in my HR role, So it's something we were good at quicker than the other parts of HR.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's always going to be one area that's
that was kind of the easy fruit for me. I joined RIM and they said we need to hire 100 people over the next year, and it was just me. I was like, oh, okay, right. So I need to figure this out. It's not just, I need to get, people didn't even know who we were. We were like complete unknown. So so it was bigger than just the hiring 100 people. It was
because then they say, can we see the website? And you're like, there is no website.
I know, it's like there's nothing.
There's me. Yeah.
But now we have it all now, because we've got really, really cool people. And the video, like, for example, we've got in-house graphic designers, we've got an in-house video guy, an expert, because we believed in having those type of people in-house, so that we could get creative and content driven.
And it's working.
So it's really cool to work with these people. I love working with creative people.
Yeah. And do you know what I think is so interesting as well, in relation to the type of company that you're in, is that you have like the creatives, and then you have the financials, and then you have the legals, and it's like, it's a good blend of people in there, as opposed to, say, just like in a marketing agency or in a bank, or like in companies like that they have. You get it a lot in aircraft leasing companies as well. There's so many different departments that it's like
we've everything, actually. We've everything. We've IT, obviously IT is most of it. We've retailers, we've operations people in airlines and in retail. So we've everything. And it does make life very interesting, for sure. Because I mean, I don't know, you probably agree with me, but like, we are all different animals in our areas. Do you know, like, I mean, I hate boxes, right? So I'm never going to put a finance person into a finance box, but you do see how we all think a little differently. And I love that. I love that cognitive, diversity, and what we bring to the table is different. And I love being able to embrace
the whole diversity of thought. So I do a lot, like Mosaic consultancy is about diversity. So I'd work with like people, say, with intellectual disabilities, or like neurodiversity, not just like but then also like whether it's LGBT community, transgender, race, religion, all of them. And I find that like neurodiversity is really overlooked. That if you think about it, that the more diverse your team is, and I'd be interested to see what like you think about it, the more diverse your team is, it's like having a lookout on different sides of a castle. If you know what I mean. So if the castle, castle's the business, and it's like they all have a different perspective.
Yeah.
So they can see what's coming, they can see opportunities, they can see threats. And if it's just you, and if you just hire people who look like you, or as you said earlier, think like you, you don't want to be doing comps and bends, wasted in it. That if you get those people who are different, all it does is like I think it strengthens your team.
Totally believe in it. And I think as well, one thing I always say to my clients, because you start off with this stuff by learning about yourself, you have to start with yourself and then apply it, across your team. When you really get to know yourself, you become friends with yourself. So you're much more confident in your strengths. It's not cocky, it's not arrogance, it's just a nice comfort with your strengths and where you want to gain mastery. But you're also absolutely fine with your weaknesses. It's grand where it used to be something to hide or to be embarrassed about. Now it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm really bad at comp and ben. You know what? I'm actually fine at comp and ben. I can get by. I can pretty much get by.
Yeah, but there's no joy in it. You're not going to
no joy in it.
Do it. Yeah.
When I go to present it, I get 50 million questions that I'm like, oh God, you mean I've got to go back and look at this? You can literally see my eyes rolling. So it's a wonderful way to, become friends with yourself, doing all this self-awareness stuff. I know when I started self-awareness, I was like, hang on, I have a list of things I don't like about myself. I don't need a new list. Thank you, Mr. Coach. And I don't really want to learn more 360 feedback and everything. But funnily enough, it actually did the opposite. Actually, made me become really good friends with myself and where I know where to apply my energy. I know what saps my energy. I know what
how to fill your
brings it to life, how to fill my cup. When your cup is full, you can fill other people's cups.
100%.
So I'm really a big fan of that. And I love your image. I'm gonna draw that. Neurodiversity, looking at different sides of the castle. That is a great image.
Oh, well, thank you. That was off the top of the head. But what I will say, do you know what? I could talk to you for hours, and I know that when we spoke the last day, so I'm definitely going to have you back on. But I have a couple of questions that I want to ask you that would be maybe more quick fire, but you have 30 seconds.
I love them.
So we spoke briefly. All right, so I'm going to ask you this. How did you find your purpose?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I guess it was a mixture of, and actually they say it's a mixture of your kind of skills, your values, plus service to others. So when I did my coaching and learned my own skills and values, added that to service to others, then it kind of made sense that for me, it's about lifting others up and empowering them to be themselves. But also, I was in the darkness. I was really in the darkness years ago. I suffered with anxiety and depression. I found my way out of the light, and I want to show others the light and their light. It's very exciting to me. I'm actually getting excited just telling you.
I actually got goosebumps when you said that. No, I really did, because I've lived it. So I think it's great that you said that.
Like, so exciting to me when I'm coaching somebody, and when they have that aha moment, when something just connects, and they go, that, oh my God, I could do that all day, every day. I would sit here doing that all day, every day with people. It just fills me up to see that happening.
Well, yeah. Okay. So it's like, don't give me another goosebump moment. I'll be crying by the end of the podcast. Okay. So that's how you find your purpose. And that's actually really good that say that again. What were the three things combined? So
tends to be your skills or your strengths. So again, a coach will do those exercises with you. It's really hard. If I said to you, name your top 5 strengths, you'd be like, oh my God, there's exercises where we can actually figure them out and then find out if they're true for you, and then go find the factual validation, right? So we figure them out and then you go validate, and actually that is what I'm known for, but I didn't know I was known for that. Your values and plus service to others.
Okay, love it. I'm going to do
that. It tends to be your purpose. Yeah.
See me now I'll be changing my LinkedIn job title. I've decided to go and do something completely different, right? So I cover for purpose. Do you think, sorry, I have like 20 questions here that I want to get through for the quick fire round.
Let's do part 2.
We definitely will do a part-time. So in relation to your biggest mistake, like what was the biggest, well, not mistake, I won't say that, let me rephrase it, lesson. What was?
Oh my God, so many. Actually, I wouldn't even have time to tell you, because I think all the stuff I've learned about myself and what I do, I learned by doing it wrong, or learned by not being in my values. Also a people pleaser. You know, when I look at saboteurs, because there's a lovely saboteur test you can do too, people pleaser is my top one, which is no shocker. And when you get stressed, you tend to go back into your saboteurs even more. So I wasn't true to myself. I didn't speak my voice loud enough. I didn't stick with what I really believed in. I was too easily swayed. There's so many mistakes I've made. I would
do
also
you think that you
say,
named it? Sorry, just because like what you said there is like really relevant. Do you think then that the first step on not resolving them, but working on those was naming them or recognizing what they were?
Definitely. I'm very, very, very hard on myself. I have been since I was a child. I'm still figuring that out as to why that is, because my parents weren't hard on me. So they're even like, I don't know why you do this to yourself, Steph.
But that's nature.
I don't know either.
Nurture. That's like a whole, that can be in you, you know?
Yeah. But it does hold me back. It holds me back. I spend far too long worrying about what people think of me than actually just going and doing it. And as I get older, and as I get wiser, I do spend less time in that space. And it's nice not to be there. It's nice. It's very freeing. So yeah, I guess I made a lot of mistakes. I was in the wrong jobs, and now because it didn't fit your skills or your values, you were in the wrong place. But I was beating myself up instead of just saying, let's go, you know?
Yeah. And it's instead of seeing it as a redirection.
Yeah.
You know, when something goes wrong or you're not, you know, you lose something. Because I think that's what I had to learn over the last year. When something was taken from me, it was my ego wanting to grab it back, saying, oh no, what is that saying? Anything you chase in life, or anything you chase in life runs away. And it's like, when you try too hard to get something, instead of just going, maybe it's just not for me. And once I realized that, I was like, you know, the shoulders drop, the jaw relaxes. It was like, all right, well, there was literally nothing I could have done about that. Like, what can I put my effort into? And, you know, well, you've
there's
been
nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with your plan. And that's a new one for me. I love that one. There wasn't something, because I always think there's something wrong with me. And it's like, no, Steph, something wrong with your plan. Just get a new plan. You know, you're grand. You're grand. You're working on yourself. You're working on yourself more than most people do. You're grand. So, you know, give yourself a break and just change your plan. And that was quite a freeing one for me as well.
I love it. Honestly, you've just given so much free jewelry here today. It's like, I'm going to be thinking about it for a week. I can't wait to share this podcast, and I definitely want to get you back on. But what I'm going to do, because I know everybody's going to be messaging me once they hear it, and they say, I want to know more about this. So what we might do is a question and answers. So people send stuff in, and if they have questions for you, we could do that. But thank you so much for coming.
I love that so much. That sounds great. Thank you for having me. Great questions.
Why? Thank you. Great guest.